Hi, welcome back to a new episode of Let's Make a Stealth Minigame from scratch in Unreal Engine with C++. My name is B. In this new episode, we continue with the animated UI for a dialogue system. And today we're going to take the text when we left off last time with the text on the UI and animated the text letter by letter. As you can see, we have the text and we have the text animated letter by letter. So that's what we are going to do. We can also skip the text and hide the animation of the UI when everything finishes. Let me show you what we have at the moment. It's basically an UI with a simple text box and the character name. With two simple animations. One animation to animate the UI. So we use the same animation to show the UI and hide it. And remember, we have a few events to do that. So we have event on animation show message UI, which plays the animation and a sound. We also have the same for hide the UI, which uses the same animation, this one, dialogue in, the same one, in reverse, with sound. And last, we extend this UI from in-game UI, which is a C++ class. Okay. The first step we're going to do is to add one more input key binding on the project. So let's go to Edit, Project Settings, and now Input, and we're going to add this interact. So you just have to press plus, set a name, in this case is interact, make sure to type this correctly, and then we just need to include the keys that we want. I selected the E keyboard, so just press E and find the key. There we go. We can add as many as we want. We have different controllers, so if we have VR, we can also implement the controllers on the VR, all of that. And so you can see we have mouse, stats, lots of things, Xbox One, Android. I usually go for a gamepad because it works with the Xbox controller, and I guess it will work with the other inputs, other controller. Okay, so in this case, I'm gonna select the face button, which is the A in the controller, in the Xbox controller. Okay, face button. Bottom. So that will be interact. But okay, so because I already had that, it just duplicate that. So I'm just gonna remove all of this. That's it. Okay, next step, we just need to go to the code and continue from there. We are not going to do anything else here. Everything is ready already. First, let's go to the main player controller, which is where we have the input hookup. So we need to hook that interact function. So remember, it needs to be an if function, blueprint callable. I like to put the category, and the name is interact. Next, we need to go to the setup input component, which is where we hook up all the keys, and add that bind action. Simple input component bind action. This is the same name as we have on the settings. The action is pressed, and we need to use the function. This is the pointer of the function. And last thing, we need to implement that interact, the body. Very simple. For this action, all we are going to do is to call this method on the UI. Remember, we have a pointer to the in-game UI object. We will call this method that we're going to implement very soon. Let me remind you what this is. It is basically a reference to the UI. On the player controller, we have the blueprint, which is the widget, the reference of the widget, and this is the actual in-game that we instantiate or we add to the viewport right at the beginning of the game, basically. And we do that on the begin play, right there. So we create the widget, and everything is fine. We add the widget to the viewport. Remember, we do this reference right here in the constructor. We take the reference to the widget, which is that widget that I showed you. Next thing we have to do is to implement everything, the animation letter by letter on the UI. Before that, in the last video, we did a test where we were calling the UI, and we set a message and a character name. And we also call it this on animation show message UI, which is the blueprint, the event to show the UI. So in this time, instead of using this, we're going to use this method where we send the name of the character and the text that we are going to animate letter by letter. So we can change this whatever we want. And this is the main method that will prepare the message and start the animation letter by letter, and also it will call this. Let's head to the code of this and let me show you everything. Okay, first let's implement those two methods, public methods, AnimateMessage and interact. We send the name, which is an F string, and the text that we want to animate, and interact. Doesn't have anything. For the animation of the text letter by letter, we're gonna need some variables. We're gonna need a timer handle, which always needs a function, an U function, to handle this. In this case, the way we're going to animate letter by letter is using timers. It's perfect because we can set the amount of time that we want to call the timer. The timer will get that time and call this method when the timer ends. So it's perfect. We can use the update or the tick, but I prefer to avoid tick if I can. So in this case, a timer is perfect. We also have two helper booleans to indicate that we are animating the text and if the text has been completed, so the animation is completed. The initial message that we receive here. This is the auto message, which will receive the message accumulating the letter each time from the initial message. And this is just an index to know which was the last letter we took from the initial message. The animated message function. All we do is prepare the message for the animation. So first we initialize the variables, both of them. We set the character name text with the name that we receive here. We need to convert from the string to ftext because this only works with ftext. So basically we have three different elements: ftext, fname, and strings. Ftext is a string that can be localized with the Unreal system. Fname is another string, but it can be localized automatically, and the string is just a string that comes from C++, and they have this f string wrapper. Okay, next thing is to check that the text has some characters. We keep the text completely here. We initialize that index with the first letter. And we just send this event to start that animation and show the UI. And next thing, we call this timer, this first timer, with get wall, get timer manager, set timer. We need to use that timer handle variable, this, and we need to send the handle function when this timer ends. I set this initial delay at 0.5 seconds, and it's not gonna be in loop, so it's gonna be just one. This initial timer is just a delay to wait for this animation. This time is enough for me because the animation is very quick. So, but you can increase that if it's not suitable for you. Let's move on down to on timer completed, which is where everything happens. Remember, the first time is just a delay. So what happens is, if we are not animating, that means the first time is going to set this to true, which means, okay, we're animating. So it will wait this time and start doing the letter by letter animation. Okay, next thing is, we take the initial message and we get the first character, the first one, and we use the output message and we append that character to this. So with this function, every time we call that, it will add the next letter. So first we won't have anything, next time we will have the first character, then next one we will have the first one, the first character and the second, and then first 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, so this is very handy. And all we do after that is just to output, send this message to the message of the text. So that's how we show every time one letter and we have the previous one. This is just a sound cue object, which is to play a sound every time a letter is set. We can do that with gameplay statics and spawn sound 2D. This is the volume and this is the object. I declared that in this section over here, which is something that you can edit on the Unreal editor. That's the message, the sound of type sound base. And I also have the delay between letters, so I can modify this on the editor and not compile the code every time if I don't like that. This is too long, so you'll see that I have less time. Okay, next thing is basically check if we have more letters left. So that I do that just simply checking if we add 1 to the index, if it's still less than the length of the message, that means we have a letter left. So for example, if this is 4, this is the third letter. If I add 1, they will be the same, so that means this index is the last one. So I can just add 1 more letter and send again the timer. So it will do this the first time, it will get here, it will say, okay, now we have more letters, so we can send the timer again. And this time I'm using the delay between letters because this time we are animating the letters. We reuse exactly the same method because we don't need to create a new one. It's very simple. Maybe if you have different timers, maybe it's a good idea to use states, or maybe it's a good idea to use different methods to make this clear. But in this case, it's just 2 things, so it's easy to remember and easy to read. So this method will call this again and do the same until we reach this condition as a false, which means we finish with the text. So we set this to we're not animating anymore, and the text has been completed. Last thing for this tutorial, very simple, is to implement the interact, which interact every time the player presses the E key of the controller, we can skip the text and just simply not wait for this animation. So also very simple. What we do is, okay, if we are animating the text, then yes, we can do that. And the first thing we do is to clear the timer. So it won't do anything else, just this is important. So clear the timer, we're not animating anymore. And what we do is basically just show completely the initial message and not the output. Because remember, this one contains the whole message. We set this to true, and that's it. Okay, so at this state, if the text is being animated and we stop it, we'll do this and it won't do anything else. So next time, right now we will have the UI showing the complete message, and next time we press interact, if we have completed that, it will hide the message, the UI. So this is very handy because you're reading the message, you just want to skip it, and then the message will stay there until you read it, and then you press the interact again and it will hide the UI. So this is a preference of mine. You could just hide the UI when after a few seconds, so the player doesn't have to press the E, but in my case I prefer this case because then I have enough time to read. Now that's it for this tutorial. So last thing, I'm gonna show you how to set those the sound and the delay. So if I go to the UI, I go to the graph. In this panel, in the details, we have the delay between letters and the sound cue. So we can just set whatever we want, and this time we can increase or decrease. Very handy. One more time, let me show you how this works. Press play, we see the animation, we can press the E, and the text stay there until I press E again. And because this is just a test, obviously this is not gonna work again because I'm using the player controller. As soon as the player is there, it will show the animation. The idea for the next tutorial is to start creating a dialogue system and use this UI to show different branches, options, so you can have a dialogue with someone else and select different branches, options, and all of that. It's gonna be very interesting. That's it for today's video. I hope you liked it. Please share, like, and subscribe if you have not done that yet. And that's it. See you next time on the next video. Bye!